Okay, most folks in the aviation community have likely heard about the arrival of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. That's not it right here. This is the Cleveland Clinic helicopter, which we'll get to in a minute, but this is it. It's a tremendous product that takes digital world simulation to new heights along with digital flight simulation. Its aviation modeling is extremely accurate, as are its high fidelity renderings of the real world. You can maneuver both aircraft and drone cameras throughout that world, and the lighting and the weather are exceptionally realistic. This all make the program an incredibly versatile tool for a lot of uses beyond flight simulation, including, as we'll discuss now, aerial photography. Now we're going to show this using, as an example, my recent photo shoot of the Cleveland Clinic medical transport helicopters, which I did for Vertical Valor magazine. We were able to plan the shoot down to the minute, setting up the shots beforehand to most efficiently make use of the crew's time and to save fuel, and to take out all the guesswork. There's very little of that and very little of feeling around for good shots once you're up in the air, which takes a lot of time away from the actual shooting that you're doing. Now, there are two obvious ways to use this sim for aerial photography: shooting targets on the ground, which is what most aerial photography usually is, and planning air-to-air shoots of other aircraft. I'll be relatively quick about the air-to-ground stuff, but you air-to-air types should still watch because I'm going to provide some instruction that will apply to both. So how do you do this? When you enter the sim, you choose your aircraft and the departure airport, which can be any one near where you'll actually be shooting. Then you either fly yourself to the specific location where you'll be targeting in real life, aboard one of the sim's available airplanes. No helicopters are offered yet, but they're coming. Or use slew mode or drone mode to get there faster and without having to worry about any actual airplane flying stuff along the way. Of course, it's fun to do that, but a lot of photographers who will be using this sim for this purpose won't actually be pilots, so slew and drone mode are important options. Now, to do all this, I use a Bluetooth Xbox controller mated to my Windows PC laptop, which is an ASUS Zephyrus G14. It runs the sim brilliantly and has the advantage of being portable, which is a key for flight briefings and planning while on the road. But there are also a bunch of keyboard controls and the mouse going on, so you have to jump around a bit in terms of input devices, and you'll want to memorize some of the keyboard shortcuts pertaining to camera views and movement and stuff like that. Anyway, you enter slew mode in order to move the airplane all the way around easily without actually flying it. You enter slew mode by pressing Y on the keyboard, and then just use the joystick and the buttons to move up and down and slew around horizontally like this. Or you enter drone mode, which is also called showcase, and it's accessed from the camera view menu, and then glide around with a bit more precision. And if you go into the weather menu, which you can do from drone mode as well, you can select the date and year, the time of day, and the weather conditions, anything from clear down to basically zero visibility and hurricane conditions. But of course, you won't be out doing photography and weather like that, so I'm going to skip that part. The date and time functions are particularly important because they'll show the impact of the sun on the terrain or ground objects that you'll be shooting. And because the terrain is accurately modeled based on mapping and radar data, it'll show shadows in valleys and around hills and in urban environments, and what parts of the terrain are lit up at what time. That's your first tip, is to use this to determine what time of day to schedule your flights based on where the sun is, and what positioning you need to achieve in order to get the best view given those lighting conditions. Now, in drone mode, you also have actual control of the camera itself, including using the controller buttons to zoom in and out, increase or decrease the exposure, or even adjust depth of field. So you can approximate the impact of different lenses you might bring on the flight. And remember that this simulator isn't designed for what we're talking about here, so it doesn't use a photographer's vocabulary of focal length, aperture, etc. So keep that in mind. You have to approximate the photographic effects, but you'll get the hang of it very quickly. Say your assignment is to shoot Progressive Field, where the Cleveland Indians play, or to be a pilot doing that assignment with a photographer. In that case, what the photographer would do is load up Cleveland and take off, most likely, from Burke Lakefront Airport. Then the photographer uses the sim to sort out what shots he or she wants, looking at angles, lighting, obstructions, and of course overall compositions. You might, for instance, get down low with the city in the background, or up high looking straight down on the field. The point is, you can quickly and easily determine the full universe of options you'll have once in the air, just by spending a few minutes buzzing around this virtual city. You'll come up with ideas that you might not be inclined to ask the pilot to try in the air because of expense or time. So you do all your experimenting on the ground in the sim and then show your pilot what you have in mind. whether via captures or clips or together with both of you in front of the computer at the same time. Now, if you're the pilot in question here, this is your chance to shoot down some of the ideas for legal or practical reasons. You can't be that low here or that high there, or this is a no-fly zone, or you can't be that close to a building, or there's a no TAM in place, etc. And then the photographer can rethink his or her ideas as necessary. But you can also use the sim if the aircraft is in the position where the photographer has framed a great shot, and then look around to triangulate precisely where you need to be. You can look straight down and say, okay, I'm over this intersection or this building, or look at the instruments to pinpoint your exact altitude precisely. So when you get in the air, you know exactly where to go for that shot, and then you and the photographer can fine-tune it on the fly, so to speak. Now, this dovetails nicely with the second subject, using the sim to plan air-to-air shoots of other aircraft. For the Cleveland Clinic shoot, we had 3 Sikorsky S-76 helicopters at our disposal, the camera ship and 2 subject aircraft. Before the day of the shoot, I spent about an hour studying the Cleveland skyline in the sim and formulating a plan for how to shoot the helicopters above and around both the city and the clinic's campus. I wasn't able to execute some of it because the helicopters got called onto missions, something that was bound to happen since they responded anywhere from 10 to 15 calls per day. So we focused on the city shoots in 2 separate flights, one a longer one midday and then a second one around sunset. So with the crews of all 3 helicopters present, we were able to use the simulator to whip around the sky and me telling them what I was hoping for. In this case, a sequence of 4 or 5 different placements around the city, and how I was hoping to get the helicopters positioned relative to each other and the background. And them in turn telling me what they're able to do, what they can't do. And we gravitated to 3 or 4 core shots, namely those with the city in the background, both on approach from behind, shooting from behind, and with the aircraft facing the camera. We were able to see when the light would be best and what the views would be like from different directions, different altitudes and different times of day. And I gave them my wish list, and we went out and did the shoots. The evening shot was in some ways the most interesting. In that case, we had a pretty narrow window of opportunity to get the shot with the sun setting exactly where I wanted in the background. Fortunately, I was only shooting 1 helicopter instead of 2, so I basically framed it up precisely how I wanted it, using the drone mode to separate from the aircraft itself and become basically the camera ship. So the airplane that's sitting there represents the target helicopter. I positioned it in the air and then separated using the sim into the showcase or drone mode, and then flew that away from the target airplane to become the camera ship. And then I moved that around, saying, okay, this is where we're going to be in our helicopter that's shooting the pictures of the other one. And so, of course, since Microsoft Flight Simulator doesn't have helicopters yet, it's represented here by an airplane, of course. Composing the shots came down to simply putting the airplane/helicopter where I thought it would need to go, and then moving the drone camera around to show my own pilot where I wanted to shoot from. The pilots of the target helicopter then looked around during the briefing from the airplane's perspective to see precisely where they needed to be above the city based on the landmarks beneath them. Now, the best part came just 10 minutes later after this briefing when we both lifted off. The target helicopter took off first, and we departed a minute or so later. By the time we came around to the area of the shoot, the target helicopter was already in a steady hover exactly where we agreed to be in the sim. And that allowed me to spend all of my time getting the shots instead of trying to actually find the best angle and framing with the sunset clock ticking away on me. I'd already done that part of it earlier. I switched up my lenses and my exposures, made positioning requests to my own pilot, etc. But in the end, we were done and heading back to the airport in less than 10 or 15 minutes. It was great fun, and it was the most efficient use of the crew's time and talents. This was especially important not just because of the fuel savings, but the ever-present risk that one of the helicopters, the target helicopter, would have to abandon the photo shoot flight if it was sent out on a call. I was able to get my shots quickly, so that wasn't as big of a risk. So that's it. I hope you all got something out of this. I would love to hear your comments, suggestions, and especially other cool ways aerial photographers can use this sim that I haven't even thought of yet. By the way, of course, huge thanks to Vertical for the assignment, and of course to the flight crews at the Cleveland Clinic for their time and their exceptional flying. It was a blast hanging out with them, and I got some stuff that I'm pretty proud of, and I hope you go take a look at it in the magazine. All right, have a great day.